Hello and welcome to the SustainabiliTREE podcast with me, Katie.
And me, Mike. In SustainabiliTREE, we will explore all things trees and woodlands with a specific focus on the issue of plastics within the forestry sector.
In each episode, we will be looking at a variety of topics around this theme, including woodland creation, funding streams, plastic pollution, deer, soils, ecology, and so much more.
Shall we get started, Katie?
Let's go! Hello, Mike. We're back again.
Hi, Katie. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. I am busy in the depths of motherhood.
Well, it doesn't get any easier, does it?
I love it.
Being a mother myself, obviously, I
Yeah.
know these things. What's the most patronising thing you've had said? Not that was one of them. Well, I hope it wouldn't be one, but what's the most patronising thing you've heard so far?
Yeah, I've had a lot of things, we did this in my day sort of thing. Do you know what, actually, thinking of one, it was don't hold her too much, it will spoil her, which I'm like, I don't think that's possible. It's a baby, but things like that. But yeah, no, not too much really, but to be fair, I've been hibernating since she's been born, so
It's I thought that's autumn winter time.
no,
you kind of done it the wrong way
full
around.
on hibernation all year round. It's too hot outside. They go back to the weather again, but it's too hot outside for me. Have to hide inside.
Yeah, especially when you've got a hot water bottle child that you carry around as well.
Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, good. We should say to the hello, obviously to the listeners, and apologise that. Yeah, I think you listen to some podcasts and they'll say, well, scheduling's made it really difficult and things like that. But yeah, honestly, the last kind of 6 weeks have been understandably chaotic in Katie's world, and I can't say understandably chaotic in mine because it doesn't even pales into insignificance really. But yeah, just really busy with kind of work-life balance and getting out on site and meeting people. Yeah, it's been pretty full on. So we do apologise, don't we, Katie, for how long we've been on this one, and therefore this episode will be a little bit more truncated and a bit bittier than normal. But yeah, normal service will be resumed when we next meet, which, judging by our standards, Katie, might be 2028, something like that.
We'll try and do it sooner. We do try, and we try to have a bit more of a schedule, but as a lot of you listening may know, life is unexpected, busy, and we do this voluntary as well, so we do this in our own time. So we have been very busy. You doing 2 jobs and writing a book, finishing your book, and so you've been busy on your end as well. But yeah, so we're doing this one though. We're here today. We're doing this episode, so we've made it. We've made it to this step.
We have, definitely. And I know we had plans of, we could do a podcast around Ren's nap time, and perhaps when I'm doing this, you could do this. But yeah, it just goes out the window because I stuff it up by being out all the time, don't I, Katie?
Well, she's was in our last episode, wasn't she? And she's featured actually in our interview that we have today. So she is with us. Bless her. She's with her nanny at the minute, and by nanny I mean not Mary Poppins nanny, like her actual nan. Yeah, my partner's mum. So she's having fun in the garden whilst we do this. But shall we introduce today's topic?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about greenwashing, which we've highlighted so many times in our previous episodes. But Mike, do you want to mention why? Actually, first of all, I'll give a definition of what greenwashing is, because I think that would be pertinent to it. So it is misleading or deceptive publicity by an organisation with the aim of presenting an environmentally responsible public image. So, Mike, how does greenwashing link to the forestry sector? What we talk about trees.
We do. Well, I think it links to everything, especially in the kind of times that we're in at the moment, where there's plenty of businesses, organisations, individuals want to be seen as doing the right thing. Having an environmental angle to everything you do in sustainability is really important. There are legal targets and bounds around that sort of thing, but I think that I guess most listeners will know that, sometimes you read something about a particular green credential, and I think the really obvious one is biodegradability, isn't it, Katie?
Yeah.
And you get a timescale of this will biodegrade in 3.5 minutes, and then it doesn't, because it's based on different tests and things like that. So, the forestry sector is not immune to this sort of thing. So, and that, even from something that's as green as tree planting, there is an awful amount of, can we say, manipulation of facts? Would that be the right way to say, Katie, or is that going to
Yeah.
end us? We're going to be up in front of a judge for that. But yeah, and we're not saying that people and companies go out there to deliberately mislead and things like that. But having been a communicator myself and a marketer, there are ways of phrasing certain things that would look better if you phrased it another way. So that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at kind of greenwashing in forestry, and I guess for us, Katie, because this is a plastic focused podcast, it is on greenwashing with the use of plastic, unconventional plastics, and all the kind of innovations that are happening around the tree planting sector. So we enlisted the help of somebody you know quite well to help explain this phenomenon.
Yes, we did. Yep. So we spoke to my lovely friend Becky Spencer, who I went to university with, and since then, which was, I actually, when we were speaking before we started recording, me and Becky realised how long ago it was we're actually at university. Which to me it feels like it was like, yeah, it was last year. No, it was quite a while ago. But we met then, and since then, Becky has become a science communicator. She's a sustainability expert, and she's also a rewilder. So me and Becky had a lovely chat, and I managed to pick her brain, ask some questions about sustainability and about greenwashing, to see what she had to say. So shall we have a listen?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So hi Becky, welcome to SustainabiliTREE podcast. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you in this heat?
I'm doing all right. Me and Mike always mention the weather on the podcast because it's as you do in your presentation. I can't really stand the heat that much. Being down south, it is ridiculously hot, and yeah, I'd be quite happy in the Arctic right now. But oh, there's Ren in the background. Yes, hello, darling. So yeah, Becky and I actually went to uni together, so we go way back. And yeah, time flies. We're both parents now, so the podcast listeners have met Ren on the previous episode, or heard Ren, shall we say? So yeah, so thank you for getting in touch with us regarding greenwashing, because that's what this episode is about today. So yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your expertise in this area.
Yeah, so mid-global pandemonium, I was on furlough at my parents' house, just growing our veggies, something fun to do, thinking about alternative lifestyles with my husband. We started kitting out a van to travel in, and that, coupled with our background in wildlife conservation, just kind of naturally found natural living content on social media and in books and things like that. I also had endometriosis and wanted to rewild my body to protect my fertility for the future. And deep diving into that is when my eyes were open to how many chemicals we come across in our life, even in eco products.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it, when you start delving into it, actually, what is going on out there. So there's lots of words for greenwashing, isn't there? There's greenwashing, blue washing. Greenhushing is a one that Mike introduced me to recently. Have you heard of that one?
I've not actually, no.
Yeah, it's I can't remember. I remember what the exact definition was that he sent to me. But yeah, I think it was where should have got this up before. Shows how organised I am. Greenhushing, where people are scared of talking about their credentials. So which is quite an interesting one. But yeah, there's lots going on, and obviously we're in a time now where things are focused more on sustainability, or we hope so, and the planet. And I think a lot of organisations and companies and manufacturers see this as just an opportunity to be able to promote their products and things in a way. But as we know, it's not always the truth. So on your hunt that you've done looking into, so you've been looking into like a lot of products that you use in the home, haven't you, and like beauty products, things like that, things for children. What examples have you come across of like blatant greenwashing?
I mean, everything. If you go into supermarkets and high street shops are the worst. Now being a parent, the ones that annoy me the most are anything that's labelled like baby or kid friendly or sensitive, have the same chemicals in them, just different marketing, or they'll use different concentrations of the same toxins. I have prepared my 5 top pet peeves though, excluding kids stuff. So that's laundry detergent sheets, you know, those like dry cotton looking things. They're marketed as super eco because there's no plastic or any sort of liquid that adds a lot of weight to shipping, and obviously that means more pollution. But it's almost impossible to find their ingredients list on them. If you try, like, a lot of them don't come with their own ingredients list on the box. So you have to go through the websites, and it just takes an incredible amount of time to find the ingredients. And I'll talk about that later, why in itself that's sketchy. But that's one that really gets me because they always have toxic fragrance in them. Eco shop refills, there's a lot of them. There's a couple of big brands out there which are trying to do better, and they've definitely gotten better over the last couple of years. But even eco shop refills, they're eco because they're using less plastic. They're not eco because they're safe for the environment. Living on a narrowboat makes me very aware of what we're putting on our bodies and into the water, because on a narrowboat, any of your grey water goes straight into the canal. So you have to use, there's no legal obligation, which is wild, but you're supposed to use obviously earth-friendly, biodegradable products. And eco shops have perfumes and SLS and other toxins in them. Then I've got deodorant refills, mostly due to undisclosed fragrance in them. But there's one big example that I'm sure a lot of listeners will know about that was super, super popular and then have been bought out by a very large unethical corporation. So that's another way companies get away with greenwashing, is that they might have started off well, but then they get bought out and they get made secretly cheaper while maintaining the face of the brand. That's quite
maintaining their customer base then as well, because people will stay with them.
Exactly. Yeah, they trust it, they found it, and it's hard, isn't it, trying to find a new brand that you can trust. You kind of want to stick with it, and you're not necessarily keeping up on top of all the updates when there's so much else going on in the world. Do you have time to keep Googling your brand and making sure that they're staying ethical?
Exactly, yeah. Nobody got time for that.
Essential oils are one of my pet peeves as well, because if you go into the natural living, eco, DIY route, essential oils are kind of a staple. We use lavender essential oil for our laundry. We know that it was grown a couple of counties over. We visited the lavender fields. That's amazing. But so many essential oils have cheap fillers in, and they only need to adhere to the 5% rule. And that's if 5% of their ingredients are natural, they can call it natural. They can put as many fillers or water or chemicals, whatever they want, in it as well, even if they're toxic, and still call it natural.
Oh my god.
So if you're finding if you're finding cheap essential oils, it's mostly filler, even if it says natural on it. They've started putting
I've got them upstairs, and
I'm
thinking I'm gonna have to go through them now, because they weren't expensive.
There's a couple of brands that I know and love and trust, and I know that they've got certifications. They're going to stay that way. Even the eco shop up the road here at my in-laws, they're not safe, they're toxic. So it's quite frustrating because you think that you're walking into a Whole Foods shop and you're like, oh, everything in here is great for my body, but it's just so unregulated. And I've got one last one, and that's paper and bamboo products.
Okay.
So everyone's into a paper straw, aren't they now? Or
Yes.
a bamboo chopping board. Well, the paper products like plates and straws are lined sometimes with a very fine film of plastic, and even when they're not, the glues that hold it together are toxic. So we don't let our toddler use paper straws because the glues themselves are really, really harmful. And the bamboo products, unless you've got something that's made out of one piece of bamboo, they're usually made with formaldehyde glues. They mash them all up into a pulp and then glue bits together with formaldehyde glues. So yeah, unbelievable, because they're the top, like, safe for turtles, safe for the planets, etc., etc. But they're not safe really for us or the planet if they've got formaldehyde glues in them.
No, and like you say, they are marketed for people that are trying to be more planet friendly, that are trying to make better choices. And that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's so with this podcast we talk about plastics in the forestry and the environmental sector. Obviously we use them for a variety of different reasons. We mainly focus on tree protection, and we tend to focus on the plastic, but like you're talking about, there's other elements to it, like the glues and the films and all them sort of things that we're not even looking at. And especially with all the biodegradable, and I'm putting my fingers up here, biodegradable, compostable ones that are on the market, that we don't know about the additives and all them extra things, because you've just listed a bunch of things that I totally would have thought, yeah, people buying bamboo plates and paper straws and essential oils. That's all just highlighted how not so much in a lot of instances. So that's really interesting. And I can imagine you've got so many more examples.
So yeah, so many more. I think once you start to distrust marketing, that's when you can really take ownership of what's going on your body and what's going around your home and in the planet. And it's a real shame that we can't just trust what's being marketed to us on a sticker. And with adverts and things, you actually have to kind of come from a really untrusting point of view, which is not amazing. But once you've got those skills and you know what to look out for, then it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the questions I've got here is, why do companies and organizations, do it? Why? What is their main? Obviously, people listening are probably going, yeah, to sell their products, obviously. But why do they do it? Why are they allowed to do it? If it's I suppose it's false, but they're wording it in a way that's not false, but it's just misleading you.
Money. There's so many different angles to this as well. Not only can people make a lot of money selling things like this, but also there are a lot of people who can influence change, who have their fingers in all the pies. So if they start changing the rules and regulations or what's on the market, they stand to lose a lot of money. But yeah, companies can do it for their own reasons. Some of them want to change reputation, and they can charge more if they pretend it's better quality.
Yeah.
So usually we see an eco product, right, or sustainable and more natural, and we think, oh, amazing, that's a better quality product. It's going to have a better effect on me or the planet. It's going to last longer, maybe. I might need less cream for every application. They can charge more that way. And a lot of them are owned by larger unethical companies who just don't care, but they know that they can con people that do care. And it sounds really pessimistic, but that's just how they make money.
Yeah, and as well, yeah, you think if something's more expensive, you usually think, oh, it's definitely better, or because in terms of like tree protection, with all the different materials that are on the market, you think, oh, there's been a lot of expense gone into researching it, like procuring it, like because it's new compostable materials. There's just been like a whole expense behind it, so that's why it costs more. But that doesn't necessarily make it better. That doesn't mean that it's still a better choice than cheaper plastic. It's just there's just so much to it that we don't, as the consumer, even think about.
Yeah, and as consumers, do we make sure we put our energy and money and appreciation into the better products? The answer is like, yeah, obviously, if we can. Or and do we demand better? Because that the only reason it's going on is just because there's no demand really for it.
Yeah, but it's hard to know as a consumer if that product is better. Like, how do you, because you see all the lovely green labeling, you see the words compostable, biodegradable, earth friendly, all these things on there. You see, oh, it's not plastic, it's bamboo, for instance, like the plates that you were talking about, and you think, yeah, that's a better choice. But unless you delve into it and have a look at what else they're using, or you won't know. So it's kind of difficult for people to be able to make the right choice.
Absolutely. And they know that as well. All of this research takes time. The reason I got into this, like I said, was in the global pandemonium that shall not be named. But I had the time to look into stuff because I wasn't working. I was just tending a veggie bed and building a van. And, people are working 9 to 5s or longer, and they have children and they have other obligations. It takes a lot of time and energy to look into everything you're buying. So you need to make sure that you have these quick tips and hacks and just get used to spotting those big red flags, because once you know, it's easier. But to first dive into that, it does take time.
Yeah. And as we pointed out, we don't always have have the time to do that. So why do you think that it is not as regulated as a lot of other areas in manufacturers, industries, and things like that? Why is greenwashing, as a sense of like how people market it, why is it not? I don't. It just baffles me how like people can make these claims and everyone just goes along with it, even though we know that they're blatantly not true. So, for instance, like with non-plastic tree guard manufacturers, a lot of them claim, you can leave it in situ, leave it in the field, and it will degrade down because they've had their laboratory testings which have certified it as being biodegradable or certified it as being compostable. But that's in a laboratory setting, not in field, so you don't actually know how it's going to degrade down in real life. And they're selling it as that's their marketing point. However, all of our standards, so the UK Forestry Standard, best practice, all say do not leave any tree protection out, whether it's plastic, bioplastic, non-plastic. Always make sure you bring it in at the end of its utility. So if that's what we're supposed to do in the sector, but yet they're still marketing it as, yeah, leave it out, don't worry about it. Like, how is that allowed to happen?
That's a good question. And I think the answer is people aren't kicking up enough of a stink about it and directly challenging them. I think if the majority of our society knew and cared about all of these bits of greenwashing and all of the naughtiness behind this on all levels, it's not just us as the public, it's us in our own specialisms and professionalisms, and then it's also ahead of the corporations. And then once they care, and the public are making enough of a noise about it, then the government and other larger corporations will challenge it. But at the moment, there's just not enough of an incentive to be better, to have better certifications, and for these regulations to exist. If there was enough of an incentive, people would be going, or corporations would be really, breaking their backs and doing all that they can so that they could boast about having these certifications, which is why, but you can say a lot without having to prove it. And if people just take face value and they don't kick back about it, then, there's just not a lot of motivation. And even buying from a B Corp organization doesn't guarantee that it's perfectly safe, natural, non-toxic, sustainable. It just means that a company is scoring better in some categories, or they're trying to be better, which is admirable, but it doesn't mean that they're 100% sustainable or 100% ethical. So you need to even look into these certifications.
Yeah, it's mad that these things are allowed to happen, but they are. And in the sense of, I really wanted to talk to you today about this, for all the forestry people out there that and conservation and ecology people that might be listening to this podcast, or general public, if you listen to the podcast as well because you're interested in trees, that's great too. But just to highlight that, just because the tree protection that you're using says it's biodegradable, compostable, has all these buzzwords, or even has certain certifications, it doesn't necessarily mean it is a better choice. It might come with a whole load of other problems as well. So as we've discussed, we know there's a huge amount of greenwashing happening out there. What are your best hints, tips, advice on how to spot the bullshit, basically, when trying to make a greener choice?
My quickest way, there's a couple of rules and then a couple of quick things to look out for. So the clearest way is to find the ingredients or materials list. Does it exist? Is it easy to find? If they're not being transparent about this, then they are definitely being shady and hiding something. If a brand or a company is truly trustworthy and they have nothing to hide, they're going to be so proud that they'll shout about their natural, eco-sustainable, safe ingredients from the rooftops, and you won't have to go on a mission to find these ingredients. Once you've found that ingredients or materials list, have a quick peruse. I'm not saying read and research every single ingredient or material, because again, that takes so long. Sometimes you might have to. But 99% of the time, if you want to uncover greenwashing, you don't have to read in each ingredient. Look for, if it says fragrance, perfume, or parfum, if it does, run away, because a company is legally allowed to hide so many ingredients, even ones that are certified carcinogens or immunotoxins. They can hide them in there because a company's fragrance is a trade secret. They can just pop so much in there and say, we don't want people knowing this, it's a trade secret, even if they are really, really toxic. That's not some wild conspiracy. You can absolutely look up the legal hoo-ha behind that. And the other thing, like you said, is biodegradable versus compostable. There's such a huge difference. If something says it's biodegradable, okay, that's cool that it's not 100% plastic. It can still take decades to disappear. And with your tree protection, trees can grow so much in 30, 50 years. They're not going to be that tiny little ring inside the plastic. It could damage the tree, it could break down into tiny bits that are still going to harm the environment, whereas something compostable disintegrates into natural elements, leaving no trace in 3 to 6 months. So it's like the all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. Everything that's compostable is biodegradable, but not everything that's biodegradable is compostable. And it's really that we want to challenge companies to strive for, especially in this environmental sector, using things in the field, in forests, in oceans. We want it to be compostable. We don't want it to be causing so much trouble. It's biodegradable, yeah, but it can harm so many animals and other wildlife in the 30, 50 years it takes for it to break down. So, yeah, that's my top tips. Find the ingredients list. Does it have fragrance, perfume, parfum? Or does it say biodegradable or compostable? And if it doesn't say any of those things, then you need to run quickly, put it down and run away.
Well, that was a great conversation between yourself and Becky there, Katie. I think some of the things she said were really interesting, especially with the kind of phraseology around the way that things are framed, particularly to the consumer. And I think when we look at it from a forestry point of view, we know that, and as society is telling us, despite what people, we try and look at the circular economy, and we follow the waste hierarchy, but society is telling all sectors really to move away from plastic. So in the forestry sector, we are presented with a product that may say that it biodegrades on site within a couple of years, but we know that really isn't the case. That the particular product might have a certification that says it'll biodegrade in 2 years, but obviously that's under lab tests. But as you know, Katie, there's a complete difference between a lab test where a material might be ground into a powder and then it's scientifically tested to make sure it disappears, to being on the side of a hill in the Yorkshire Dales or down in Essex. The kind of field, the field results are going to be completely different from on the whole, are completely different from those lab tests. Now, I completely get it from a manufacturer's point of view, because if they want to bring a product to market, they effectively can't wait 15 years, can they, to see how it degrades in the field. So the only thing that they've got available to them is that lab-based test. What concerns me when I'm planting a scheme is, if I'm going to be specifying a biodegradable guard, firstly, it's not a circular economy. You're effectively putting something out there that's waste, and whether that fits in around UK Forestry Standard is quite interesting. Well, basically, it doesn't. But the lab test is saying that's going to disappear in 2-3 years, whatever. But deep down, that's probably still going to be there in 6, 7, possibly 8 years. And if it is on the tree at that time, how it degrades is going to be interesting. Does it leave the the center of the tree open for particular rubbing? So I guess I'm going to throw a question over to you before we talk about what Becky said. But is that an example of greenwashing, or is that just, I guess, an interpretation of the facts or the scientific standard?
Probably a bit of both, because if they were able to market it in a way where they could explain it to that extent, no one would bother reading it. They want it as quick as possible. So using buzzwords, using that short sentences to be able to get their messages across, can lead you down the path of being like, oh, it has passed this test, therefore it is good. But actually reading like the small print of it, it's like, yeah, that test was done with that product being ground down in a laboratory testing for this specific temperature for this specific amount of time. Whereas, like you've just said, it's not like that in the real world, especially different areas. Scotland's going to be different to Essex, and the soils are going to be completely different. All the microbes, everything that's there is going to be completely different. So it cannot represent real world, but they are able to put it to market as that. So they can say that on the tin. So yes, it's true that it has passed that laboratory test, but is it true that it's actually still okay to put out in the environment? Don't know. So I'd argue it is greenwashing to an extent, because they can't actually prove that it's okay to go out into the environment for a long period of time, until we get these in-field studies, ones that Forest Research and things like that back. But like we've mentioned before, a lot of the prototypes that have been put out for these studies are version 1, version 2. A lot of these organisations are on like version 10 of these products. So yeah, it's really difficult. But I would say it is a style of greenwashing. Not saying that it's not factually, it's not incorrect, but it's misleading.
Yeah, and if you're a landowner trying to do what you think is the right thing, we are trying to reduce our plastic in tree planting, then I think it's really difficult to pick apart. It's quite difficult to pick apart the marketing and the information, as you say, who's going to read the small print? And I guess that's where we've got to with UK Forestry Standard, the latest one that was launched in October last year. There's that kind of, it's not doubt, is there? But there's a line in there that says that choose whether they're bio-based or plastic need to be removed when they are redundant. And we know when a plastic tube is redundant, it's because the tree can cope without it. And I just wonder how manufacturers of unconventional plastics are looking at that. Is their interpretation that it's redundant when the tube has degraded, or is it the way I would see it? It's when that tree can actually substantially support itself without that shelter.
Yeah, and that clarification is important, and I'd agree with the latter, same as you. That's when it's redundant. But yeah, go back however many decades ago, before all the research on microplastics, it was thought that as you saw plastic break down in the environment, it just broke down and disappeared, and that was fine. And that was a marketing technique of people who sold plastic products, but specifically plastic tree guards, that you could leave them on the tree and they just break down, because nobody knew about what was actually happening as the plastic broke down and what happens in the soils and things like that. But now we do know that. I asked the question of some of these alternative materials, do we know what happens to them when they break down? And a lot of ones are marketed as they truly do biodegrade, they break down and they're able to be broken down by microbes and things like that, and they just go back to carbon and water and all sorts. But what about all the other things in there, like we spoke about with Becky, the glues that are in a lot of the bamboo products? So what about the glues and the adhesives that are in some of these alternative tree guards? What happens to them? Any of the other binding products that are used? The canes and all the treatments that's on the wood for stakes and canes, what happens to the tree ties? Like lots of other questions that come from it.
Yeah, and people have not got time to be answering those questions, have they? They just want to get the right product for the right job and get trees planted. So I have to admit, I found Becky's some of the things she was saying really quite stark, and especially as you mentioned the bamboo thing there. And I think it's a shame I couldn't make the conversation, because I'd really like to speak to Becky about it. But how do companies? I suppose it's really obvious, but how do companies get away with it, Katie? How are companies able to say what they do? We know that with a little bit of investigation, and Becky did mention some places she goes to do some research, but how do you get away with it?
Like Becky said, it's just not regulated. There's not the enough people. I don't know whether there's just generally not enough people that are massively concerned to be able to delve into it in the depth that it needs to. It's mainly about money, isn't it? And a lot of the certifications that like Becky mentioned in her talk and stuff as well, that sometimes companies only need to meet a few bits of criteria to be able to get the certification. I personally think there should be a certification, and if anybody out there wants to work with us on that, I would love to do this for plastic tree protection, to actually say what it is, like for them to meet whatever different parts of the criteria of that certification, because I don't think there is not that I've come across, an alternative tree protection out there that is, you could say, all in all, the best environmentally friendly thing that you could use. I can't think of one that meets every single bit of criteria that we would say that it needs to meet for that, but there is some out there that meets certain ones. So maybe to have a certification in our industry would be really helpful. But a lot of the ones that are out there for other products, like she was saying, for like paper straws, for products like that, other biodegradable things that are sold, it just doesn't seem to be regulated. And it's just such a shame, because you could, even something as simple as like making your packaging green is enough to sort of push it in the direction of somebody thinking they're making a better choice.
Yeah, and the public are understandably they want this, don't they? You know, I guess this is why various forms of greenwashing works. It's because, you know, we are, as consumers, we're actually desperate to know that we're doing the right thing. So, you know, there's stuff around refillable bottles and things like that. You know, you mentioned the it was the deodorant, wasn't it, that has now become part of a larger conglomerate. You know, but the public wants good news. So as a marketer, I guess it's what I used to do, Katie. You know, my job was to sell stuff. You know, so you see, you're trying to pull on the heartstrings. You're trying to sell a dream, basically. And if people have got purchasing power and are environmentally conscious, you know, they want to use their pennies to, you know, it gives them a little bit of a good feeling. It kicks that dopamine off if you're doing the right thing. So, you know, that's why marketers kind of just alter that the way they talk to kind of get into that mindset. Well, you can see that with like perfume ads and cars, and it's all that. You're selling a dream, aren't you? I think it's Becky's conversation certainly opened my eyes to a few things, and I know that the Forest Plastic Working Group have been looking at you know, what sort of things that people need to consider if they're going to buy a non-conventional plastic unconventional plastic product. You know, trying to look at some kind of sustainability pathway in that. And if people head to the Forest Plastic Working Group website, they'll see part of the research that's on there. What was your main takeaway from the conversation you had, Katie? I think was it a couple of weeks ago now?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and Ren joined us as well.
Yay!
Of course. Yeah. I was, as I mentioned at the end of my chat with Becky, I was shocked at how even something like a paper straw, which we know, you know, McDonald's and KFC and all of them big chains all swapped to paper straws from their plastic. It was a big thing, and it was all like, yay, you know, this massive change. And it was, you know, it has had its benefits that we're not using plastic anymore. But it's that overall feeling of like, yay, this is 100% better. And then Becky mentioned about the glues and things in plastic straws, and then was like how bad that is. And I was like, okay, so it's bad in just another way for your health and things. And I was like, oh my goodness, like how do you win? And it can feel like an absolute impossible thing to be able to solve. I think for our industry and what we're talking about in like forestry, conservation, ecology, like the reason we need to look at why we are using that material in the first place, and if we can actually reduce the need for it. And we'll talk about that in another episode when we talk about like the waste hierarchy and things like that. And we've already spoken about deer and things, but that's the reason, you know, why we're even needing to put protection on trees. We should be dealing with the problem rather than just keep putting all these band-aids on. But whilst we still need to use protection, we need to be aware of it. And with, you know, what Becky mentioned there, it makes me think about, you know, okay, so it's an alternative unconventional plastic shelter. It sounds brilliant. It's made out of this, I won't use any examples, but it's made out of this wonderful material that sounds brilliant. Okay, but what about the glues in it? What about all the other things? How does it not turn to mush after one winter? What have they put in it to make it that? Where was that sourced from? What's the ethics of that? Did it come from another country? So you've got all the ethical impacts of that, of how it was actually sourced, or the carbon footprint of how it's come over. Like, there's so much to it that we should be thinking about. But obviously we're all massively busy, and there's so much going on that we kind of trust in the manufacturer to be able to give us the facts, where obviously, like we've just said, they're going to try and sell it to us the best way possible, and being misleading. So they're not actively lying, but being misleading. And one thing I wanted to mention was buzzwords, because I think this is quite important when we're looking at using an alternative material, if within their marketing they're using buzzwords like plastic free, non-plastic, green, biodegradable, compostable, things like that, it's rather than just taking that at face value, have a look and see what that, what tests they've had done, what certifications they actually have for it, and try. I know, again, we don't always have time for it, but to delve a little bit deeper into that, because even the term biodegradable in itself, everything is biodegradable.
Yeah.
There is no time frame on it. So like I could, this plastic bottle here is biodegradable. Yeah, it is. It might take a few hundred years, but it is biodegradable. So if someone says that, they're not lying, but they can't give you a time frame for it. And that's the issue I have with some of these biodegradable tree shelters. And the same is for compostable as well. You've got two types of compostable. You've got home compostable and generic compostable, and a lot of people don't know there's a difference for that. So with like compostable coffee cups, for instance, I think it was when I was at university, they found that a lot of people were just throwing them on the floor because they thought, oh, they'll just break down, so I don't need to put them in a bin. Whereas it's not the case. They actually need to go and be industrially composted, because they need to reach a certain temperature for them to be able to break down. Whereas in your home compost, it can happen within our climate and things like that. And it's that's such a significant difference, but that's not, that people don't know that, so they're sort of trying to sell it to people that might not know the actual intricate facts of these things. So that's the thing with tree guards that are marketed as being compostable, is a lot of them actually still need to be removed to then be sent off to be industrially composted. So it'd be the same as if you put a plastic tree guard on, remove that and recycle it. You're still having to go through the process of the labour of removing it and things like that. So you might think that you're getting an easier option by choosing that, but you're not. So it's just a minefield, really.
Yeah, and you can see why professionals in the sector are therefore sticking with plastic, can't you? Because there is so many unknowns. There is a lot of, across all sectors, a lot of greenwashing. So people kind of revert back to plastic because it's trusted. They know what it does. You can recycle it quite quickly. It's a cliche, isn't it? But it is a minefield. It's quite interesting what you're saying there about kind of compostable coffee cups. There's a brilliant podcast out there called Talking Rubbish, and
it's very good.
Yeah, I can't remember the two guys who do it, but they are very, very funny as well. So if anybody can talk about rubbish and recycling and actually make it entertaining, then they're a winner with us, aren't they, Katie? But it's well worth listening to. It kind of breaks down the barriers of recycling and where our stuff goes. The one I've just listened to was on landfill, which again was really interesting. But they've done an episode on compostable cups, on coffee cups and coffee pods, and all sorts of different things. So yeah, I would recommend that, and I'll pop that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, no, they're really, really good. And if you guys listening, if you check us out on LinkedIn and our Instagram. Oh my gosh, it's a long day. Instagram page as well. We've got some bits on there, and I'm going to post a first look greenwashing guide on there as well to be able to help you when looking for alternative tree protection.
Excellent. I've got another question for you, Katie, if that's all right. Or just perhaps another little poser. So if the consumer becomes aware of greenwashing, and I think as a public we are naturally a little bit cynical about what people tell us, and are kind of naturally curious. Does it almost flip the other way that companies might have a really good product that is a genuine green option, environmentally friendly, does amazing things? I'm not just thinking of it in the forestry sector here. I'm thinking, any sort of sector. But then they're that scared about actually saying how good it is that they don't come forward, and then we don't hear about that sort of thing. I think I read somewhere it was called Greenhushing, but I'm not massively convinced that might be something I've made up in a dream. But
no, it is real, because I mentioned it in my chat with Becky.
Yeah.
And I had to Google it, and it came up on Google. Therefore, it is
It
real.
is definite.
So,
I mean, we don't want, especially in the sector that we work in, we don't want to stop innovation, do we? You know, we are looking for kind of solutions and ideas. At the end of the day, we've got to plant a load of trees, haven't we? I mean, let's just strip that right back down to its basics. We've got to plant a load of trees, and we want to do that as efficiently and as environmentally as possible. So we don't kind of want to stifle innovation, but you do kind of wonder whether, you know, with people looking more at greenwashing, that it kind of almost it makes companies a little bit reluctant to actually get something out into the marketplace. Or am I just being? Yeah, I'm just posing it to you, Katie. Anyway.
no, it could be. Yeah, definitely. I know that there's a whole thing with marketing, isn't there? That sometimes the thing that they're actually marketing it for can cause people to not buy it. So I can't remember, my partner was telling me about how there was some organisations that their product actually was really good for the environment, but it turned out that people weren't buying it, whereas if they marketed it a different way, like focusing on like vanity or something like that, then it then sold. So I'll have to speak to him to get the specifics, and I might do a post on it, because that would be quite interesting to see. But there's a whole people out there who are listening to this who are marketers or do that for a living, or you know, you said you used to do it, that there's a whole thing behind it, isn't there, trying to get in the head of the consumer. So yeah, there might be organisations out there that are creating actual genuine products that would solve this whole issue that we've got with waste in the environment. But yeah, they might be not able to get it out there as efficiently as possible. And also, you know, us talking about it on this podcast, because we're seeing so many products out there that are making us go, "Ugh, really?" If there was one in that 100 that are being manufactured that was actually amazing, we might not trust it, because we don't trust all the other ones, because they're all talking crap.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I was asked ages ago what the ideal biodegradable shelter would be, and I think I said at the time that it's got to be something that when it biodegrades, I think I came up with. I think, you know, when you get a potted plant, you sometimes get that it's almost like a Hessian plant pot that it's part of, and then that kind of breaks down and it almost feeds the soil. So I had this idea of, you could have a 1.2 that starts off as a kind of, you know, a kind of solid shelter, then, and as that degrades, it effectively just is hardened soil, and that helps the tree grow. And but then it's like you said before, you know, how do you make that last for as long as we need it to? How can that last? I mean, some sites I'm working on, 10 years you need a shelter on for. So if that starts to break down any time before that 10 years, then the deer are saying this is great. It's not easy at all.
And that's why we need to deal with the issue itself as to why we're even using them in the first place. And I have been to sites where alternative material tree protection have been put on, and the deer have actually eaten them.
Yes.
I mean, the tree didn't get eaten, but yeah, they lasted a few weeks on there, and then they're gone. So the poor people that planted that hedgerow had to go out and purchase more tree guards. But yeah, it's a toughie, and as we speak about every time on every topic we speak about on this podcast is a difficult one. But that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a strap for the podcast going forward. SustainabiliTREE, be easy if I could say it. SustainabiliTREE, it's a difficult one.
It's a toughie.
I'm not sure we're going to put that on a t-shirt, but we'll be really interested in hearing people's comments and thoughts on Katie and Becky's conversation. You know, I thought some of the stuff Becky said was quite controversial at times as well, and it was like, ooh, that's a good one, and things like that. So yeah, I'm definitely interested, or we're both interested in hearing kind of people's views on what was said, and you know, how we can apply it to our sector. as well. I think is important, and you know, and I guess I'd just like to ask our listeners, you know, do you care? Does it matter that a product might be out there that has a little bit of greenwashing if it does what it's supposed to do? You know, are we almost trying to pick it apart too much? You know, can we cope with a little bit of a little wash, a cat lick, as my mum used to call it when you had it? Can we cope with a little bit of a green cat lick now and again instead of a full drenching storm shower of it? So yeah, so please do get in touch, and all our contact details will be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for listening to a pair of tired individuals who have been busy looking after children and at work, and who can't string sentences together. But the fact that you've made it this far, we're really grateful, and hopefully we'll be able to have a bit more coffee next time, so we'll be able to be a bit more. Actually, no, that might make me less able to speak if I have too much coffee.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of coffee, Katie. I think that would definitely work next time. Yeah, once again, you know, I think Katie said right at the top of the show. There you go, Katie. There's a little bit of media speak for you at the top of the show. That, you know, we do this for the love of the sector, and love what's going on in the sector, and trying to do the right thing. And, you know, it is a I won't say a labour of love, because I hate that cliche. It always sounds like, you know, oh, well, we don't have to do it, but we love it and stuff. But no, we really, really enjoy bringing these conversations to you. And we do have a plan going forward of different guests we can bring in, particularly from, you know, perhaps a manufacturer, Forest Plastic Working Group, you know, people are actually specifying different types of products, deer management and things like that. So we've got a long list of guests ready to bring to you. And this is an appeal to the listener. You know, I'm going to say it, Katie. I'm sorry, but, you know, the likes, the comments, and the subscribes are important for a podcast of our stature. You know, we're now on to our 6th episode, and we've built up quite a nice listener base. But, you know, to spread what we're doing and what the sector doing far and wide, we do need your help, dear listener. So yeah, likes, comments, and subscribes are really useful to us. Just share it. You know, if you could share it with your friend or whatever, that'd be really useful to us. Go on, Katie, you make a better pitch than me.
Please share far and wide. Yeah, no, we're really grateful if you could share, and yes, check us out on our socials as well, to see what else we've been up to. But last thing before we go, I will dig out from my magic hat, to which I will share the magic hat, because they are real, a different hat each time, what next episode will be about. So I'll just have a quick little rummage. It is about the Forest Plastics Working Group.
Oh, awesome.
There we go. We've been meaning to, we mention it in every single episode, but we'll go into a bit more depth about what they are, what they do, and hopefully be able to encourage people to follow them as well and see what's going on for any help that they need with their tree planting needs.
Oh, that sounds great, Katie. And the quiz will return. The quiz will return next episode as well. I don't know where we're up to. Well, I think you were winning, so I don't know.
I'm winning.
I don't know where
exactly
we're up to. So yeah, but we'll bring the quiz back as well. But please do, as we say, like, comment, subscribe. I can't say that enough, really. And, you know, if you do have comments on what we're doing, let us know. Questions. You know, we would like to do another listener based episode that we did a few episodes ago as well. So yeah, please do get in touch if you've got any questions. And yeah, thanks for listening and putting up with us again.
Till next time.
Bye.
There we go.
Awesome, Katie. I can't say phenomenon either.
Phenomenon.
That was great, wasn't it?